We're smart, serious people, right? Let's use some metrics. Metrics. You guys like metrics?
Sometimes. I like the metric system.
Nice. Yeah, let's see. So what am I here to talk about this week? I'm going to talk about metrics. I read a book, The Score, by Cifi Nguyen. How do you guys pronounce this last name?
I try not to.
Nguyen? Is that Vietnamese?
Is it just Nguyen? I've heard it just Nguyen.
I think it's one of those noises that English speakers find hard to make properly.
Well, maybe I'll just say it's Win, because the book is about games and it's about metrics. And it makes a lot of interesting points, and so I thought I'd just talk some about metrics today. So you guys might have heard what's called Goodhart's Law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Have you guys heard that one before?
I have.
I don't know. Anything come to mind in your lives or your experience where this rings true?
Yeah, like we have one of the companies I worked for, we had like safety awards. And so if you didn't have a lost time injury, you guys would get like $1,000 and you could use it to buy golf clubs, a shotgun, shoes, whatever you wanted. This company was based out of Louisiana. Well, what that meant was that if you got hurt and you reported it, you cost everybody $1,000. So that was one of the ways where it was like, okay, cool, we have this safety award, but unless you were going to the hospital, you didn't say you got hurt at all. And so you didn't get medical attention, you didn't get this, you just kind of walked it off.
So did you ever not report something? Don't say yes if that's like a felony or something. I don't know.
I will neither confirm nor deny, but I have heard stories from...
And you did purchase shotguns?
I got golf clubs. I lived in California at the time, so they wouldn't ship me a shotgun.
Damn.
California's a bit more stringent on their gun control laws than Louisiana.
My example's not from my real life, and it might not even be true, but it is a fun story if people haven't heard it, which is in the British Raj, they had a big rat problem. And so they put a bounty out on rats. And for a while it was working, but then suddenly there was way more rats than ever before. And it turned out that people were breeding the rats to turn them in. And then so, of course, they canceled the tax and people let all the rats from the rat farm go. And then it was way even worse than it was before.
Man, these are...
I'm not sure if that counts as a metric or not. But
well, number of rats turned in. Yeah, I mean, that's, very a couple real interesting examples, guys, of these perverse incentives. That's pretty gnarly. There are a couple that came up in the book that were interesting. One is college ranks on the U.S. News and World Report. So, I mean, they have a formula that combines a whole bunch of these metrics that each can be gamed. I mean, I think you'll know some examples, like admission rate is one, where colleges, they spend a lot of time trying to recruit people to apply who are not going to get in, just so they can reject a lot of people and appear more selective. They have employment 9 months after graduation. Maybe that has something to do with the GPA inflation. They just try to make all their grads look like they're stellar students. Everyone has A's for everything. What are some other, time to graduation rates? Nothing about learning. I don't know. Quality of education. But anyway. Sorry. I mean, it's all worthwhile stuff, but it's the kind of stuff that, once this becomes a big way that people evaluate a college and it becomes important to them, then they start gaming it. I'm a software engineer. I haven't seen this in any company I've worked at, thank goodness, but I've seen it at other places. Number of lines of code, which is just if you're a software engineer, it's like a flabbergasting, ridiculous measure of how productive a software engineer is, especially if they know they're being evaluated by it. It's just the most gameable thing ever. You just write really long, verbose code, and then there you go. You're more productive, even though your code is worse. It's basically accomplishing the same things in a worse way.
You can analogize it to writing a book or whatever, If you're paid by the line, you could write something like Bob ran. Bob really ran really fast. Bob ran a lot. He ran fast. He ran so much, dude. Bob was running, and you just go on and on.
Dude, that reminds me of this book. So part of this section is kind of so I'm halfway done with this book. It's a little early to do a book review, but the drip of useful tidbits has started to run dry after, I don't know, 150 pages. And it's like, I don't know if I'm going to make it to the end of this book. It's a really interesting book. Like the first chapter was really interesting. And then it's been like, I don't know, 10 bits of interesting information since then. Anyway, I feel like the publisher was like, it has to be 300 pages. And he's like, I guess I'll just repeat myself over and over and over.
I mean, 150 pages in, I mean, that's like better than Atlas Shrugged. I read that, and after like, I think the first 30, you got the point, and then it was just that same point over and over again for like 300 pages.
Another great metric is the Dow. Okay.
That's a metric for whether or not you can punish the president for diddling kids. I think is
so.
what that's a metric for. I think there's some sort of like company stocks involved or whatever, but I think that's a secondary function.
You know, there's an interesting one. The Fed, the U.S. Federal Reserve, actually does have like two specific things that it's supposed to do, a dual mandate to...
Wait, can I guess?
Yes.
I think I know them, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
Minimize unemployment and inflation.
Yes.
Well, they, not to be pedantic, but it's not minimize inflation. It's hit inflation targets. I believe their goal is to have like between 2 to 3% of inflation.
Right. I think that the mandate they've been given is to have stable prices. And so, and they have set the 2% target. They don't actually have a minimize inflation, and they certainly don't want deflation, right? This is an interesting case where, I mean, the combination of these two targets that are so macro and the fact that their control over them is so indirect, and they have these very blunt instruments of affecting these things, I think makes it so I don't know of this being, I don't think that they have gamed this. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think the Fed has like found some way to screw with monetary policy in a way where they're like really perversely screwing with employment and inflation.
It turns out they're just running an online despair campaign to make anyone who's looking for work give up, and so they don't count as unemployed because they're no longer seeking work.
Like the Fed does get to choose what metrics they use to measure it. Like I think one of the big things they leave out is like housing costs. Like they'll track a lot of
convenient.
Yeah, so it's like there are like, you know, when it was set, like when they had these, when they started their met, or like how they tracked it, like I do think they picked it, but like as like time has gone on, at least for some states, like housing costs makes a big part of like inflationary pressure.
I don't think that the Fed ignores housing costs, but you're talking about like CPI.
I think because like they get to
Like
control
they
which ones
inflation.
they pick, and I remember housing was like a big one that was like whether it should be included or not. So someone might want to fact check me on that.
All right, Google break. All right, what am I looking up again? Does the Fed include housing cost in reported inflation?
According
ChatGPT
to
says
my
yes.
The
Personal
Where's the
consumption expenditures price index. It has a smaller weight than in
Okay.
CPI, so it's a weighted combination of costs, which is kind of weird. Metrics tend to be weird. All right. Anyway, so that's right. It's interesting though. They're defining metrics that they themselves are trying to manage, which is a little different than an institution defining a metric that members of that institution then are trying to optimize, right? Because like no one in the country, like I'm not trying to keep inflation at 2%, right? Like
Why not?
I want my wage inflation to be at like 1,000%, and I want my grocery inflation to be at 0%. So, but I have very little say about either one, unless I like work hard or I don't know. Let's see.
You could become a breatharian and stop eating.
Get that Costco membership. $5 rotisserie chicken.
Yep.
$1.50 hot dog.
Tastes better than you think.
So, yeah, let me talk about some of the cool ideas. I am going to talk about, this book is going to get a very, like, mixed review from me today. Because one thing it has in spades is cool, interesting ideas. What it does not have is any kind of reasonable organization for them. So, anyway, I'm going to talk about some of the cool ideas in no particular order, because if they don't have to give a clear structure, why the hell should I? So one interesting idea is value capture. So he talks about how when using an institutional metric to guide your behavior, part of what that is outsourcing your values. now I don't even need to think about what it is I'm trying to accomplish. Like, I just try to move this number. Or one thing he was saying is before these college rankings came out, law schools, like, genuinely tried to do different things. They were like, some law schools were like, we're going to try to get you clerkships for prestigious judges. Others were like, we'll set you up to be a corporate lawyer. Or others were aiming to have you be a social justice warrior. And they had different like approaches and philosophies, and that's what they sold. That's how they differentiated themselves. And now they just say we're we're tied for second or whatever. That's how they sell themselves now. The law students used to think about what they wanted and how that school might help them do it, and they'd be asking questions about their career earlier on. But now they're just like, well, I want people to think I'm a fucking genius, so I'm going to go to number one. So we're kind of just like forgetting about what we care about. And I got to say, I mean, I went to high-ranked schools for college and grad school, and I don't think I was thoughtful about what I was doing. Sam is an example of someone who went to a good school for the thing you wanted to do, and you actually thought
California
about
Maritime Academy. I will make a comment on that. When my freshman year, we weren't in the college rankings, or like it wasn't taken that seriously. But by the time I graduated, we were like in the top 5 for undergrad earnings in the California system. And our GPAs had changed. Like if you had got, like our average GPA was below 3.0 to get in. And all of a sudden it's like it's 3.5, 3.6, like good GPAs are way better than what we had. But like we had guys that were like they had done their 4 years in the military and they were looking to train up for something. We had a lot of guys that were like 25, 26, not guys that were like high school successes. And by the time I left, it was like, all right, calculus was a mandatory class everyone had to take, and everyone was a super good student. But we kind of lost that, like guys that had like gone out, not had a successful high school, but guys that had gone out, gotten real world experience and were ready, like had developed a work ethic to sit down and like learn.
right.
But the student body had changed by the time I left.
And had that like motivation like behind what they were doing.
Yeah.
I remember, I mean, I did electrical engineering for undergrad, and there were also classes. I remember classes where like I just like crushed the midterm, just like 99 or whatever on the midterm. And I was doing great on all the homework, and I'm like, okay, I can coast now. Like what, like I don't need to try anymore in this class. And I look back and I actually just don't really know. I don't understand the material from the second half of that class, because I was like, I'm aiming for an A-. Like I wanted an A-, and I really did myself a disservice. I outsourced my values. I forgot what the hell I was there for on a few occasions.
I was going to ask if that's something they talk about in the book, where maybe like if people set a metric, like you have to make 100 widgets, then like, the guy will work really hard for an hour, make 100 widgets and then stop.
One thing that's really interesting, this book is like half about institutional metrics and it's half about games. And he kind of implies that they're like two sides of the same coin, that there's like important lessons to be drawn. I don't think there is. I don't think. Anyway, leave a comment if you've actually read the whole book and you actually know if there's any point to putting these two things together in the same book, other than it's just like, well, I study institutional metrics and games, and therefore I'm going to try to act like they're related to each other. Because they both have scores, right? It's the score is the name of the book. So yeah, I don't. It feels like he could get to that one, Danny, but he hasn't yet. Around page 150 or. Here's an interesting one. Sort of a deep point that he makes in this is he's talking about how metrics, like institutional metrics, give accessibility, and they let you scale and they let you aggregate at the expense of nuance and the need for expertise. And I don't know, maybe this is just like completely obvious. But that's sort of just like there is a benefit to, like, instead, say for schools, maybe like the best possible output of a class from the teacher to describe how a student performed would be like an essay by the teacher describing how the student performed, right? Like they did really well on this stuff, like they showed great motivation, is great at this sort of thing, much weaker on this, something like that would actually like let the next teacher really give them a really strong place to start if they could pay that kind of attention. But that kind of interface from one teacher to the next, or from your undergrad to your job, like that interface doesn't exist. It's too complicated. It requires too much expertise and interpretation, decision making. Whereas 3.5 is a language that everyone speaks.
At my alma mater, UC Santa Cruz, when it first started, they didn't have letter grades. They had narrative grades, like you were describing. That was the exact system they had. And
Damn.
then eventually they had to introduce letter grades because, employers were like, what the fuck is this essay? Instead of like, oh, I see you got an A+.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. UC Santa Cruz had narrative grades.
Mhm.
Did they still have them? I know they had letter grades also, but
They were like optionally included. I got them a few times in small classes.
did you read your narrative grades?
Yeah,
Were
of
they
course.
were they
Yeah, somewhat, like a little blurb about how I did.
Danny
I
is
mean-
gifted. He's ideally suited to lead an epic podcast, given a couple of decades more of development.
That was basically what they all said, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of foresight in those teachers.
Let's see. I mean, another point that is, fairly obvious, but also really deep, is that insisting on using metrics and having that approach to dealing with things forces you to focus on things that can be easily measured. And these are things that don't require judgment. These would be things that are objective, like in skateboarding, the number of turns, not the stylish ease with which the skateboarder moved. Because people might disagree about stees, but they can count turns.
Would you count like the way they use like zoo animal wellness in this, maybe? Because I feel like a lot of the time they focus on stuff like how much stress hormones are in the animal's blood, stuff like that. Because that's like an objective thing they can measure, whether, as opposed to like, is our bald eagle happy is a harder question to answer. Does he feel personally fulfilled in his bald eagledom?
As our viewers know, our preparation on our podcast is legendary, as in it's not real, it doesn't exist. Like, I've read some about these two measures of happiness, like how do you evaluate your life as a whole versus how was your day today. I'm anxiously awaiting examples of interventions designed to optimize happiness that result in just like dystopian hellscapes. Have you guys heard of any examples of that yet?
Probably. It's hard to think of off the top of my head, though.
You just have like a thought of a foster mom screaming at her kids before like CPS shows up, like, everybody look happy. Everybody look like I'm a great mom. That's the image that, like,
Exactly.
whether they're happy or not, she's like, you guys will be happy
Smile.
when the social worker's here.
Meetings will continue until morale improves.
Oh man. So yeah, another like very interesting thing in this book is that it's also about games. And it talks about how, imposing constraints and scoring systems to like that sort of is an art form that lets a person enter a very different action space, like take on an agency that's very different than what they do in their normal day-to-day. And that's awesome. And they gave some examples of some cool games. I was wondering if you guys have actually heard of these. You guys are Dungeons and Dragons people.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of Lady Blackbird? It's not Dungeons and Dragons, but it's kind of
Curious what that is now.
it's kind of
I think he's about to tell you.
Well, I'll tell you my version of what this guy said it was, Basically, Dungeons and Dragons but the characters are a little more prescribed, and the scoring system rewards staying in character and stirring shit up by staying in character. Basically, encourages that drama. As
Role playing.
Right. So that sounded interesting. Another fun game he talked about, or another fun sounding game he talked about, was Imperial, which is kind of like there's a game of Risk going on, and you and all the players are the Machiavellian investors, or dark shadowy figures who are like buying up the different countries and like having them go to war with each other, so or not, so that you can get rich.
What an implausible sounding scenario, dude. How do they come up with this stuff?
Surely fantastical.
And then, and the last one that I'll talk about was called Sign. And this one is wild.
I've seen signs before.
Yes. Sign as in sign language. Basically, the game is based off of some like the way that people sort of spontaneously create language, where everyone has some like deep personal message, like if I don't get chocolate, I will die, or something like that. I don't know.
Very
That's
deep.
been for some people, or I don't know, I'm depressed, or something like that. My mother didn't let me go outside. I don't know, some message like that. Okay, and at the beginning,
My foster mother beat me whenever the CPS worker showed up.
told me to smile. You get to start off with this small shared vocabulary of sign language. Then you have to spend 30 minutes not talking, but you just get to just hang out in the room using your sign language to have conversations.
That doesn't really sound like a game, though. How is it a game?
Well, but the point is you're trying to actually communicate that message on your scrap sheet.
The people are trying to figure out what your message is. And you're trying to figure
Right.
out what other people's are.
Right. So you're trying to actually like communicate this, and you end up like building up a little bit of a language on top of that initial vocabulary without speaking at all. You just ground it in the objects that are right there and stuff like that. So anyway, that sounds kind of intense. High level of nerdiness required. So anyway, I mean, the author draws this contrast between the number, scores and scoring systems in games versus institutional metrics. And I think that he might be getting to some profound conclusion, but I haven't gotten there yet. So anyway, if anyone made it to the end, please leave a comment and tell me whether and what the deep conclusion is.
Do you want to... Wait. All this talk of games, I thought of one more bad metric example.
Okay, let's hear it.
In the Olympics, whatever they used to score the breakdancing, the ray gun ended up being so highly scored with that dance.
Wait, she was actually highly scored? I thought she just lost.
I thought she did pretty well, right? Because the whole point was she was doing these weird...
The kangaroo hop?
Or just it was carefully
circle.
crafted to maximize the points that she was getting, not to look good. Was what I read as the explanation for it.
I didn't get that.
There was the skier that was participating in a trick show or whatever, and so she figured out that all she had to do to make the Olympics was ski down the mountain, and if she did that, she would get a certain amount of points, and if you tried a trick and failed, you got less. So she was just all she needed people to do was to mess up 2 tricks and she got in, and they did. And so she got to the Olympics by just skiing straight down a mountain instead of doing tricks.
Yeah, that's so funny. These artistic games or sports, these mechanical scoring systems really come up short. So anyway, the book is The Score by C.Thi Nguyen. And yeah, my main metric for him is number of pages, and he should cut down on them some. But it's a very interesting book so far. And, maybe this will be a 2-parter. Next week, I'll tell you what was the big reveal at the end, if I make it that far. All right, catch you next time on another perversely incentivized episode of the InfoHazard Podcast Show. Bye-bye.